благодатна, вера вечна, вера славна, наша вера православна. Вера вечна, вера славна, наша вера православна. В ней душа стремится к свету, лучше этой веры нету. Веры вечной, веры славной, нашей веры, веры православной. Веры вечной, веры славной, нашей веры православной.
Idemo dok se radi prvo.
Просветила, Святой Русью окрестила. Вера вечна, вера славна,
Idemo dok se radi.
Вера вечна, вера славна, наша вера православна. Вера истинная вечна, наша вера бесконечна, есть и будет славна.
Okay. I know. Ok, vidimo što ima novo na Twitteru. Jackson Hinkle. Bricks. If you know, we'll apologize to me. Who just became the first BRICS leader to publicly condemn Russia's special military operation in Ukraine. Okay. Ruski tank, Njemačkog tanka, ok, Donald Trump, Vukovi sa Ludaka. Okay. People are supporting Russia, the silent majority. I touched it.
It's going to take some. Abrams, as you know, are very sophisticated tanks and they require significant training. So even as we approved them yesterday, it's going to take some time to get them to the battlefield. So this is not something that's going to appear in time for the spring offensive.
Which underscores what I said. You know, we've been asking for this for 6 months. Had you started 6 months ago, they'd be all ready for the spring offensive. So what happened here? Who's to blame for this?
You know, I think at every stage of this, we have looked at what the Abrams, as you know, are very sophisticated tanks and they require significant training. So even as we approved them yesterday, it's going to take some time to get them to the battlefield. So this is not something that's going to appear in time for the spring offensive.
Which underscores what I said. You know, we've been asking for this for 6 months. Had you started 6 months ago, they'd be all ready for the spring offensive. So what happened here? Who's to blame for this?
You know, I think at every stage of this, we have looked at what the Ukrainian Abrams, as you know, are very sophisticated tanks and they require significant training. So even as we approved them yesterday, it's going to take some time to get them to the battlefield. So this is not something that's going to appear in time for the spring offensive.
Which underscores what I said. You know, we've been asking for this for 6 months. Had you started 6 months ago, they'd be all ready for the spring offensive. So what happened here? Who's to blame for this?
You know, I think at every stage of this we have looked at what the Ukraine... Abrams, as you know, are very sophisticated tanks and they require significant training. So even as we approved them yesterday, it's going to take some time to get them to the battlefield. So this is not something that's going to appear in time for the spring offensive. What is most needed...
Which underscores what I said. You know, we've been asking for this for 6 months. Had you started 6 months ago, they'd be all ready for the spring offensive. So what happened here? Who's to blame for this?
You know, I think at every stage of this, we have looked at what the Ukraine... Abrams, as you know...
Okay, we know. Let's see. No, możemy do... Wow. Wow.
Supporting providing F-16s to Turkey until they have ratified that agreement. And
U.S. tell Turkey Congress would be more sympathetic to F-16 sales to Ankara if it proves Finland and Sweden to join NATO.
Is one of the concerns that I have. I think Sweden has moved very deliberately to address the concerns that were discussed with Turkey in terms of their accession into NATO, and that their President Erdogan, unfortunately, is using this, it appears, for his domestic political interests as opposed to really addressing what's in the interest of NATO and the security agreement that we need as we support Ukraine in their fight against Russia. So I don't know which of you would like to address that.
Why don't I start? We agree with you, Senator Shaheen, that Finland and Sweden are ready to join NATO now, and we were grateful for the speedy ratification here. And as you know, almost all allies have now ratified, with the exception of Hungary and Turkey. This comes up in every single conversation we have with Turkey, and we have tried to, the Swedes, as you know, have put forward a roadmap that they worked through with Turkey. They've met many of those benchmarks, and they're continuing to try to do more there. We have made the same point to our Turkish allies that you just made, that we need this Congress's support moving forward for the security enhancements that we think that they need as allies. F-16, some of them are old, but that this Congress is likely to look far more favorably on that after ratification. So keep making your points, and we will too.
Thank you. Would you like to add to that?
I would just add.
Će sigurno. Russian strike hits a Ukrainian S-300 defense system. Let's see that. Boom. Boom. Max Blumenthal. Comments came soon after the U.S. Turkish agency offers to provide alternative sources of energy, presumably as Victoria Nuland celebrated the Nord Stream 2 pipeline bombing. To je ona kobila koja koja je delila kolačiće na Majdanu 2014. I ne samo to, nego je lično odgovorna za ovo sranje što se dešava. 100%.
I am Senator Cruz. Like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2 is now, as you like to say, a hunk of metal at the bottom of the sea. Senator Cruz, like you, I am, and I think the administration is very gratified to know that Nord Stream 2.
Daj bre, ne mogu da te slušam previše.
А нікуди він вже їде з нами у військкомат. Він їде з нами у військкомат.
Спокійся, улиця, брат.
Ні, роботу вийшов, це не вийшов військкомат. Їхали, все, давай. Ви пускайте робоче місце. І робоче місце вийшов на роботу. Я вимагаю від нього виконання закону. А він на роботі при батьки попередньому поліві не може взяти піти до нас. А як же? Що це нам? Мама інвалід, мама інвалід. А що, покажіть, будь ласка, документи. То він не може сказати, мама інвалід. Він мені вже пояснив всі. Мама слаба, що? Мама слаба, але інвалідної. Зараз апою.
Lasting peace, we need to make sure that we continue to arm Ukraine. And when doing so, there's still a lot to do. And for sure, we will be doing more. That's what I can tell you right now.
Ma jebote, neko te napravio.
Давай, детка, работай. Кроши этих пидоров.
Терминатора. Šta mu je onda ovo što... Ne, bre, idi bre. To delje, brate, ne da delje, nego rastrnije toga. 1. Changes. What is that?
That's it. Just went into the. What is that?
Da, šta je, gdje je, brat? Gdje je?
For anybody that's been to Palestine, this is no joke anymore. This is no joke anymore. When you have companies like Puma who are sponsoring the racist Israeli Football Association, which has 6 teams on stolen Palestinian land, they are regularly shooting down youth Palestinian footballers who have hopes and dreams of playing football. They are killing them. I walked around the stadium in Gaza that Israel bombed and turned to rubble. The Palestine Stadium, main stadium in Gaza, where all the international players were. I walked around there with Mahmoud Sarfat, who's an attacker. He played for the Palestinian national team, Mahmoud Sarfat, and he was arrested while trying to join the rest of the Palestinian team, and he was tortured. He was held for 3 years without charge, and they ended his career. He had to get released with a hunger strike for 99 days. That is your life as a Palestinian international footballer. That is Mahmoud Sarfat. And he could be one of the lucky ones because they killed 3 more footballers. They bombed him in Gaza in 2008-9. They have shot and maimed youth that were walking through. One was shot 11 times and a dog was set upon him, and they purposefully shot them in the knees. They were 17-year-old, 19-year-old about 5 years ago. This is what is happening to Palestinian footballers all the time. They were waving their flags all the Arab World War and everybody else during the World Cup in Qatar. Why? Because they know all this. They see all this. We're not joking. Everybody that's been to Palestine has seen all this. It's clear as crystal. Look at this, the latest one. He's just got killed now, the first top scorer in the Palestinian League. That's the latest one that's been murdered. He's a footballer. He plays football. Is that not the world's game where we all want to actually release ourselves from the rest of our lives and actually do something that's joyous, that's sporting, that actually gets you communities and youth together on the right track? They get killed. We are asking, we are demanding that the new Puma chief executive, we are saying we're not going to stop and we are actually going to increase this because what Israel is doing is even worse. They killed 17 people in the last 19 days. That's just a lot of young people as well. And these are crimes against humanity. They're ongoing. It's the longest running military occupation in modern history. Even Amnesty International.
Go, brother. Prvo sam se vratio iz projekcije filma Oluja. 2 minuta nakon završetka niko nije ni pregovorio ni ustao. To nisam doživio u bioskopu. Zlatan Vidović kao dane pokidao. Glavna je srpska. Ukraine also need fighter jets, warship and submarine. Pošaljemo i nuklearno oružje, bilo bi najbolje. Ma jog, ma šta je? Ajde zaratimo sa Rusijom, brate. Jebote, kakih idiota ima, ovo je strašno. After fighter jets, nuclear weapons, to je to. That's what I'm saying. I hate thinking, me too. Let's both stand for it. I'm supporting Russia, and I'm following you. I'm supporting Russia, yes, and if you do, I'm following you. Numerous IFR armed drones are born over Gaza. Da, mislim da se večeras nešto koka tamo. I see. Poslije ćemo da igramo Apex. Ugledar will fall, znači Ugledar pada. DPR militia believe that the overnight assault on Ugledar today could put an end to the Ukrainian grouping, thereby mourning next is the ultimatum to surrender, mopping up. Ok, znači ide Predaja pa čišćenje. Ja znam da je Mokoskojka i Pavlivka već u rukama Rusa. Kad Kramatorsk padne, sve će padne. Kramatorsk je ključan grad. Nije Bahmut, nego Kramatorsk. I just wish every leader was like Putin, the world would be a safer place. That's true. Tačno. World united against evil. Yes, you are the evil one. You are the dark side of this world and the cancer of this world. Vi ste kancer ovog sveta. Poland is building a massive strike force to move in Ukraine. The West is intensifying Russia to hit back. The Western Empire has established a policy of escalating every time Russia doesn't react forcibly to a previous escalation. To je tačno. Which means Russia is being intensifies to react forcibly to those escalations. Da, jednostavno kao da hoće rat. Mislim da se neće to isplatiti nikom. The United States and Europe demanding that African countries do not cooperate with Russia seeks to restore the colonial independence of Africa. That's true. Zelensky doesn't love Ukraine, he only loves money. That's true also. Oh, she's the face of evil. True. Kiev has never stopped. Ja to sam čuo za ove Transkarpatije. Ta ideja Ukrajine prema Mađarskoj, tamo gde su većinom Mađari. Znam da ih tona i tona mrtvih stiže, da ih tamo regrutuju najviše na Mađarska popizda i sami Mađari neće da ratuju. Kiev has never stopped anti-Hungarian action in Transcarpathia for a country that aspires to be EU. This is unacceptable. Hungarian State Secretary of National Policy. Slušao sam ga pre neki dan kad je rekao da to što radi Ukrajina je katastrofa. Wagner sending KAF for bodies home in coffins, not in body bags. Honor your enemy. Nam da su poslali 20 kamiona, čini se. Tako su rekli. Da ima leševa za 20 kamiona. Sve ono što je bilo u Soledaru. Tako da streamamo na više strana, na Facebook, na YouTube, na Trovo, malo probamo danas dok ne počnemo da streamamo non stop, pa ćemo imati doći da streamamo. I imamo i nas i na Twitchu, i na YouTubeu, i na Facebooku i ovo, tako da i Trovo. Trenutno streamamo na 4-5 strana, da Streamlabs daje opciju multistreaming, tako da to isprobavamo. Jedino što vam treba je dobar bitrate, to znači upload. Ja mislim da imam 50, tako da to je sasvim dovoljno za to. Tim što ćemo posle malo da igramo Apex. Ok, to smo već videli, idemo dalje. B group. Ovo smo već videli. Pluto is a planet. Fight me. Okay.
On this. Just smoke on it. America was founded and created by white men. And with the help of God, they created the greatest country on this side of heaven. The white men. And the white men made a mistake
pa brat, prijatelju, Jerry, to je
by
tačno,
allowing
brat.
other people to come into
To je
the
tačno.
country, right? The people of color.
To je tačno. Gde
And
si
as a
pročitao?
result of that, the people of color is now taking over
Sad
without
na
one
Facebooku.
shot being fired. Here it is, y'all take it. And white men like this guy, Patrick Henry, and Lindsey Graham, and so-called Michael McCall, a Republican from Texas, so-called representative, they are afraid to stand up for the country.
Okay, let's go. Idemo dalje. Those campaigning Hungarians are being harshly mobilized in the AFU. Many of them are dying. To je tačno. Kažem da sam slušao pre neki dan.
Ability of the Ukrainians to evict the
What?
Very pleased that the Biden administration has finally decided to supply American tanks to the
I ova
Ukraine.
svinja
The M1
isto bio
Abrams
kao
tank is a
Victoria
terrific
Nuland.
tank, will upgrade
U Ukrajini.
military capability
Ista
of the
svinja.
Ukrainians to evict the Russians invaders from their territory, which is the goal.
Kako će
The
da
goal
kuka,
is
ko
to get
pička će da
Russia
kuka kad
defeated
krene
in
haos.
Ukraine. You
Kad
either
krene
pay now
haos,
or
a
pay
krenut
later
će
with
sad da je
Putin. If he
nezaustavljiv.
wins in Ukraine, he'll keep
Trenutno je
going.
haos
The Chinese are
nezaustavljiv,
watching
tako
what
da
we're doing.
da
And
bude
if we show
krenuo haos
weakness
kao
in,
pička će da
Ukraine,
beži.
they're going to take
Smrad
South
jedan,
So the tanks are
podsjetit ću ga na ove
helpful,
reči što
very
je rekao.
helpful. I'm glad to see the Germans are sending the
Nije
Leopard
problem u
tank,
tome
which
što
is
će on
probably
da
a
ode,
better
nego što
fit.
ćemo mi svi mi.
Combination of tanks and long-range artillery will give the Ukrainians the edge they need to evict the Russian invaders, which is in our national security interest. The sooner this war is over, the better. The sooner we defeat Putin, the more stable the world will be. So well done to the Biden
Disgusting
administration
creature,
and
man.
to
Absolutely
the German
disgusting.
government, but we need to act quicker and more decisively. It's taken far too long to.
I can't even listen to him anymore, man. Huh. An 85-year-old woman from near Moscow, apparently a big solo fan, left a note at home saying she was going to the shop. Znači, ostavila je poruku vjerojatno svojim ukućanima. Tipa, nemoj briniti, idem samo do radnje. But actually headed to the station to get the train. A otišla na stanicu to get the train na front da bi mogla da kuva za ruske trupe. So she can cook for Russian troops. But on the way she slipped on some ice and now she's in hospital. Želimo brzi oporavak baki do 85 godina koja je išla kuva za ruske trupe. Želimo je brzo oporavak i da Britney Spears, koja je Britney Spears? What? Opet lažu, brate, opet lažu. 334. To Ukrajinci koriste te 34. Iz Rusije s ljubavi, Srpsko-Ruski centar, majne. Idemo. Dobit ćemo like. The US administration is talking Russia's warning about the risk related to the arms supplies to kill seriously, but does not consider sending American tanks to Ukraine an escalation. What? What the fuck?
You pay slightly more the more you make. But it stops there. And so if you're making $1 billion, you pay the same amount you're paying if you made $139,000. I think it's $139,000. Well, guess what? Keep the same percentage or something like it. Make sure that nobody making up to $139,000.
Medvedev. This creature is not even a clown anymore. I think he's speaking about Zelensky. But just a serious dog, a poodle, and the trainer's feet who yaps at his hand clap. Everyone understands this. True. President Putin, the goal, as I have so many times before, is primarily to protect the people in Russia itself from the threats being opposed to it on our historical lands bordering our territory. We cannot allow this to happen. True. It will be difficult to maintain the combat capability of Abra tanks. Pentagon, that's also true. To je istina. Baš nas briga za tebe. What the fuck?
Nei tanti taldatiche. I tanti tode odi nulni. Ma bumbrati dik taldatika da to tanti ani budi khatradata. Tanti tode budi khatradata. Te budi khatradata.
Fucking clown.
Ukraini нужны танчики. Нужны танчики и солдатики. И танчики тоже очень нужны. Мы будем брать этих солдатиков, до того танчики, они будут ехать продаться. Танчики тоже будут.
Wait to buy eggs. Wish me luck. Što su jaja u Americi skočilo sa $3 za 10 komada na $15-16. Ukraine is only winning on Twitter. That's true. Initial military just now. Russia attacked a friendly neighbor totally unprovoked, and we didn't stop Russia. They will continue into the rest of Europe. Is that no? Pogrešno. That's truly false. Challenge McFall to debates around the internet. Ta pička nikad neće smeti doći na debatu s tobom. Yeah.
Наполеон мобилизовал практически всю Европу против Российской империи, как Гитлер мобилизовал, захватил и поставил под ружье большинство европейских стран и бросил их против Советского Союза. Сейчас тоже Соединенные Штаты сформировали коалицию из практически всех европейцев, входящих в НАТО, да и не только входящих в НАТО, из членов Евросоюза тоже, и через Украину по доверенности ведут войну против нашей страны с той же самой задачей. Задачей окончательного решения русского вопроса. Так же, как Гитлер хотел окончательно решить еврейский вопрос, Наполеон мобилизовал практически всю Европу.
Точно. Europe saw less for точно. The direct military sales by US companies rose 48%. 157 billion fiscal year. I uopšte ne sumnjam u to, brate. I have no doubt about it. The dvostruki aršini dostupni Israeli forces fire a gas bomb to Russia, suffocating patients, including mothers, children. Now Israel je van kontrola. Totally out of control. Totally. Unbelievable. Oh my god. What the fuck? What the fuck?
Changes take place in your immune system when you're pregnant.
Go dalje, bote, i dalje guraju. Nema Srbije bez Kosova i Metohije, tako je. slava kokaini. A koja, šta ko nosi leopard? The girls are Romanians in leopard outfits. A, misli se na ovu, ček, nisam ne vidio. Ovo ovdje je. Ovo. Dobit će oni te 90-te. Evo je Valina Barbak, koja je to ko bilo. I don't want to tell us this. The German foreign minister is telling the world what we already know. This is economic media. She's izjavila da je Nemačka u ratu sa Rusijom. Ako je to tačno, onda vidimo. Mi ste u bunkerima, jedna smrdljiva Alina Barbak, to od ovih zelenih, jedna smrdljiva džukila. German foreign minister declares we are fighting in war against Russia. Really? You're war against Russia? And why are you not in bunker? Ukrajinska vlada je jedna od najgorih na svetu, znate, korumpirani, kontrolisani.
Ukrainian government is one of the worst in the world. Corrupt, controlled by a few rich people. I mean, really unfortunate for the people in Ukraine. Ukrainian government is one of the worst in the world. Corrupt, controlled by a few.
Čovječ, svuda su na svakoj slici. Na svakoj slici. Kako Rusi uhapse nekoga. Novak Djokovic, Serbian Australian fans chanting Putin, we love you. Of course we love you. If they so love Putin, why they choose to move to Australia from Serbia? Why didn't they emigrate to Pensacola or even Sochi in St. Petersburg? Šta te, baš te zabolo, baš te. Samo Srbi smeju da kažu šta misle, sve ostali su pičke neviđenih razloga. Jedino Srbi, brate, kažu stvarno šta misle, bole ih kurac. Tako je, držite se, braćo. Idemo, bre, protiv zla. Only Serbians, dude. Only Serbians. Fucking. Svi ostali ko pičke čute, ne smo niko ništa da kaže. Ma jebite se, bre, tamo. Reci, brate, šta si se ustro jebote, onaj ko te jebao. Evo ga, stari lab. So NATO will send all their toys, Ukraine will run out of manpower, the people will revolt, Zelensky will be made the scapegoat by the West. That's when America and NATO will attempt to intervene, fully with troops and planes to restore democracy. That's my plan. No. Oni su suviše su pičke da to urade. Protiv Rusije nikad. Desit će se da će naravno Rusija da pobedi i onda će koji jajare da beže iz Ukrajine. Wow, with this revelation from the top, did someone from our intelligence community identify me as a state-sponsored entity conducting cyber operation against targets associated with Americans or other elections? And did the Twitter employee do it at their sole discretion? Your account has been reinstated for advertising. The initial suspension may have occurred as a result of system or human error or due to the validation of policy. Ma jebote onaj ko te napravi, tebe i Twitter. Mrljivi. Sve cenzura, vrat. Do cenzure. Okay, evo je, Ursula von der Krap.
The label, Made in Europe, represents quality. And Europe's industrial leaders, many of whom are here based in Belgium, really can be proud of this.
Yeah.
But Made in Europe means so much more.
Otimanje tuđe zemlje, napadajući tuđe zemlje kao što su Irak, Afganistan, Libija, otimajući 14% srpske teritorije. Sigurno. Ja sam i poslao ovaj jedan. Rekao sam mi kad je rekla da Evropa ima values. Samo sam pitao what values you can.
Where students can attend university.
Veži, rekao bilo jedno. The Russian government makes a decision in Russia. Putin went before his government all of them against Ukraine on next to Zelensky just following orders. That's true. 100% true. Vidi, ovim šalju motore. Latvija. Hvala vam za motore. Montenegro announced the country is launching its first ever space program. What the fuck? The Prime Minister stated the negotiations have already begun. The experience organization Montenegro. The scheme due to the risk of money laundering, tax evasion, terrorist finance, corruption, and infiltration in organization. Bože me sad. Pentagon the Kiev regime received a version of the Abrams, sve će to Rusija da poništava. Kao što je poništavala jednih 3.500 tankova koji su imali pre godinu dana.
In our free enterprise system and keeping every American safe by preparing us
5 mjeseci trudna žena. Ajde trči jebote, žena ti pala.
In our free enterprise system and keeping every American safe by preparing us.
Jadna žena mora da stoji to s ovom budalom.
А вот эти ябачки, которые его... А слышишь? А вот эти ябачки, которые его поддерживают.
Ой, блядь.
Что с ними делать надо? Вот расскажи, что с ними делать вообще надо? Вот их же много.
Что с ними делать треба? Зимі, знаєш, що треба робити? Зимі треба, блядь, виходити на площадь, и, сука, блядь, вешать, нахуй, на столбах. Вот, блядь, як у яком там 42-м, 43-м году робили фашисты, блядь, так же самое и нам робить, блядь. Выходить, блядь, и, сука, вешать, блядь.
Или как в Одессе, наверное, 2 мая, правильно?
Да.
А слышишь? А вот эти...
Čo, Belorusiji ništa ni da pričam. 7627 tenkova, jebote, patak te jebo. Wait, what? The conflict will end when Putin is defeated. Keep dreaming. The only way to achieve this is to arm the Ukrainians with what they need to destroy the land bridge to Crimea. Only after that can negotiate. Okay. Keep dreaming. Boris Johnson said.
НАТО, сьогодні з генсеком НАТО Єнсом Столтенбергом маємо відкрити постачання. З генсеком НАТО Єнсом Столтенбергом маємо відкрити постачання також далекобійних ракет для України. Важливо, ми маємо розширювати і нашу співпрацю в артилерії. Ми маємо вийти на постачання літаків для України.
Šta imali ste čoveče 300 i nešto aviona, šta se desilo s njima jebote?
Важливе завдання сьогодні.
Marš bre budalo je. Kad je Leopard shvatio će da ide u Ukrajinu. Hunting Ukrainian, yeah, sure. Nerealno mi da neko će da škola možda konta da je nacionalno. Scott Ritter, our famous weapon inspector. Scott. Let's see, Scott. Nisam čitao šta je danas. Salom, that was 2019, okay. Evo ga, Nancy. Evo ga onaj Nancy. Every 3 minutes, one rocket's coming. Je sede u Kijevu i kad je bila sirena, to je piši, čekaj, možemo da nađemo to samo. Malcolm Nance. In Kiev, Ukrainian missile. Let's see, that's...
The Russians now have to understand Ukraine's unique territory.
Every 3 minutes. I to nije tačno, so ide na svakih 5-6 sekundi.
Is that going down? No. But I've never seen a fast mover.
Pogledaj.
Are we in an air raid?
Dosli? Yeah. In an air raid.
We are. We had the air raid. There's another coming. Wait, there'll be 3. Stand by. Wait for one more. They're fired in 30-second interval. They fire in 30-second
No, it's not 30-second interval.
Smoke. Stand by. 3, cruise missile, caliber. Stand by. In 30 seconds. Wait for one more. They're fired in 30-second interval.
Actually, it's not 30-second interval. Actually, 5 to 6 second interval.
They fire them in 30-second
A
interval.
najbolje kad kaže stand by.
Smoke. There we go. Stand by. 3, cruise missile, caliber. Look. Stand by. Stand by. 4. 4. Let's see him. There he is. There he is. Let's go. Let's go there.
Gdje ćeš bre Malcolm Nance? Gdje ćeš sise? Oh dude. Pobegao u uniformi, pobegao ko pizda je pobegao. That's true.
You are not yet suspended from Twitter again. Still, your account is still active. And not only that, look at the followers. You picked up 200 followers since we started. What do you think of that?
Odmah te spopiću sa ovom.
Yay. All right. Nathaniel from the USA. On the last episode, you said it was moronic to suggest that there's any Nazi affiliation within Wagner. Then who is Alexei Mikolov?
I don't know, Nathaniel. You tell me. Who is Alexei Mikolov and why is he important? And what in God's name does he have to do with what Wagner's doing on the ground in Ukraine today? If you can make the case that whatever you think Alexei is and his affiliation and that somehow has tainted all of Wagner, gosh, I'll be impressed. But I don't think you'll be able to do it. And I'm not going to answer your question.
What? You're saying it's not your responsibility to refute an argument he failed to make. Is that your position?
Well, I mean, I could go Google the guy's name and then start doing the research, but we only have an hour and you only give me 3 minutes and I'm not that good on Google. So I'm just going to have to pass. I've learned this. I've been advised when a question comes up, not to get angry, not to curse, but simply say, I'm not going to answer that question.
I've noticed a lot of people, because I occasionally get into a little banter, a little debating, a little disagreement online. I notice a lot of times people have this weird expectation that when they fail to make an argument, they expect the other person to figure out what it was.
What point they're trying to make.
What they haven't even said. It's crazy.
Also, geopolitical military analysis of the war in Ukraine. Interview with Victor Bout. Ledo. Nightmare of NATO equipment being sent to Ukraine. That's for January. The Russians have every right to hate us, but don't use it. Our favorite weapon inspector, Mr. Scott Ritter.
My dear friends, welcome to the Daily Planet channel. I'm Dmitry Zolotarev. I'm the editor. And they know what to expect and how to take this certain event, let's say. And I mean, whether it is bombardment of Russian barracks or something, anything which is not clear, you make it very clear and you really give hope. Not because you want it to look so, because you just take it, analyze it, and say as it is. Okay.
Let me respond to that. Wow. I mean, that is. I mean, it's a great honor that people feel that way. It's also a huge burden that you just put on me. You know, one, I would not be the right person to be president of the United States. It requires a different caliber of person, and if I were that caliber, you wouldn't be talking to me right now, because I'd be saying completely different things about the situation in Russia, because I'd be politically motivated, designed to say things that please the establishment, not reflect an accurate assessment. Two, thank you very much for people who say I should be offered Russian citizenship. I'm an American. I'm a proud American. I love my country. One of the reasons why I speak out like this is because I think it's the duty and obligation of every American citizen to speak truth to power. And I'm in firm disagreement with the policies of my government, but my government is not my country.
Absolutely.
And one of the reasons why I think one of the things that gives me credibility, hopefully, to the Russian people is that I'm not trying to say things so that they please the Russian people.
Exactly.
I'm saying what I feel is the answer, because if I were just saying things that I thought would please the Russian people, that would be worthless. That would be meaningless. It would be shallow. I'm saying things, I have to be honest, when I first started doing this, I didn't realize I was addressing so many Russian people. I didn't realize that my words were being translated into Russian broadcast. I wasn't intending to have a Russian audience. But once it became clear that I did have a Russian audience, I think the other important thing and why it's critical that I be seen as an American
Ćemo još malo da igramo Apex, imamo još jedno 7 minuta svaki dan. Ćemo po sat vremena da odvojimo za... Šta ima novo na Twitteru? Malo porazgovaramo s ljudima na Facebooku, YouTubeu, Twitteru, Trovu, Twitchu.
And people you care about are on both sides of the conflict. I mean, this is a horrible situation that Russia's been put into, by and large, by the policies of my government.
Verovatno će da bude YouTube i Trovo ili Twitch i
we can't allow the rancor, the anger, the angst that is rightfully generated by
najmanje subscribera jer su nam ugasili nam je YouTube account. Smo imali dosta, tako da
to the United States and frankly speaking to the American people. You have every right. You have every right.
So we are not unfriendly to the American people. I'm really sorry to interrupt you.
No, I didn't say you were.
Yeah.
I said you have every right to be. You have every right to be.
Sorry.
But you're not. And I hope that by speaking to the Russian people in an honest manner, that they can see that someday this conflict, when it ends, there is a necessity for our two peoples to get back on track. Friendly relations, the peoples. Governments are governments.
Absolutely, yeah.
They will do what they do. But it's essential that the people of the United States and the people of Russia find a way to, if we can't be friends, and I'd like to believe we can because we once were friends.
Yeah.
I have always been friends with the Russian people. But if we can't be, I understand that there's
Scott Ritter, ladies and gentlemen, the genius, onaj koji samo priča
we can
istinu.
live in peaceful coexistence.
Our favorite
we don't have to be
weapon
enemies.
inspector.
And that's why it's essential, I think, to come on programs like yours and speak to the Russian people.
Kaže Đura, što pričam na engleskom na srpskom? Pa zato što, brate,
I'm not perfect.
zato što
I'm not the
uglavnom
world's greatest
pričam na
analyst.
engleskom.
I speak honestly,
I
but I
onda
can
se
make mistakes, and I hope
pobrkam,
people understand that I don't have a crystal
Mislim
ball,
da ljudi u
and I can
Srbiji
say things that I believe are
skoro
correct, and
svi
they won't turn
razumeju
out to be
engleski,
correct because I
tako da...
wasn't aware of all the information. And even if I was aware of all the
A
information,
ima i neki ljudi koji nas
I'm
gledaju
God.
koji
And
ne znaju srpski.
I can make errors in judgment, but any errors in judgment I make aren't malicious. They're honest errors, etc. So I hope people aren't looking at me as some sort of a savant that is giving all the answers, but rather look at me
Na
as
YouTube-u nema nikog,
part
na
of a
Trollu nema
process
nikog. Dobro, na YouTube-u nema
thinking
mnogo
through a
subscribera, što
problem
imamo 30
logically,
subscribera. Jedno je
responsibly,
YouTube ugasio account,
and
tamo smo imali
in a manner
5.5
which
hiljada.
reflects humanity and the defense of humanity, whether it be Russian, Ukrainian, American, European. I mean, we're all humans on this planet
Kao,
together. We have
we
to learn to find a way
violated
to live
their...
together, or else
Znate šta radi YouTube, cenzurišu.
Mother Nature may answer that question for
Pošto
us
sad trenutno imamo
and
30
remove us from the
subscribera i
equation, because we no
probavamo
longer
gde ćemo,
worthy
gde ćemo inače da
existing on
streamujemo,
this wonderful planet we call Earth.
onda i što ne bi ni, mislim sad ne bi ni puštali muziku koja ne može na YouTube-u, naravno, ovo je zato što sad možemo da puštamo što hoćemo, jer nemamo mnogo sa YouTube-om i tako dalje i neće
And I just want
neki
people to know that
daju
I respect that and I will do my best,
muziku ako si,
but
čim
I'm
pređeš
just
1000 onda da.
one man who is trying to do the right thing, and people need to keep that in perspective when they listen to
One man, but not the only. You're not the my aunt, my cousin, one of my cousins, they survived the Mariupol siege, the battles from Mariupol, and for more than a month we didn't have any idea whether they're alive or not. I did have a couple of around 20 friends in Mariupol. I'm sorry, it's not really easy to talk about that, and living, etc. How should we figure that? So, are we pedaling to the Third World War III already?
consequences of a direct conflict with Russia. Regardless of how it turns out in terms of conventional force, there is a real risk that it would escalate to nuclear conflict, and there's no such thing as a limited nuclear war.
Absolutely.
So the moment a single nuclear weapon is used, it will eventually escalate to a general thermonuclear exchange and the end of all life on Earth as we know it. And as long as that remains in the back of everybody's mind, we're okay. And what I mean by that is, I don't think we're going to head down that path. But it's a very, very dangerous game that the United States and NATO are playing. And it's a game that has been encouraged somewhat by the absolute maturity of the Russian government. And what I mean by that is, Russia has from the very beginning done a masterful job of escalation management, making sure that its actions aren't of such a precipitous nature as to provoke a NATO intervention. And so where Russia could have acted in a more aggressive fashion, they didn't. You know, I'm not privy to the thinking that went into the initial phase of the Russian special military operation. But I take President Putin at face value when he said this wasn't a war. This was a special military operation. Even Arestovich, and I know I don't like to put too much emphasis on his words because he's a propagandist.
Da, I on je rekao da su Rusi ušli
polako,
niste li nikog dobiju.
Now that he's a private citizen, he has given some very interesting interviews.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he said was that the Russians came in gently, not trying to kill, not trying to occupy, believing that there would be limited resistance, and I think there's two things. One, of course, President Putin said that is because they view the Ukrainian people as their brothers, and that you don't want to come in hard against your brothers. But the other thing is, and I respect President Putin, and I believe that he believes what he said. But I also know that, or strongly believe that the Russian generals are saying, no, boss, it's going hard. Let's get this thing done. Let's do it right. Let's crush them. Let's get it over with. And Putin, I believe, said no, because if we go in hard, like you ask, like you suggest, we may provoke NATO intervention. By going in so hard, we may panic NATO and prompt them to intervene. So I believe that one of the aspects of the special military operation was to go in so softly that even NATO would go, whoa, we don't understand what's going on. Maybe this isn't as dangerous as we thought it was. We're just going to wait. And they did. Now, the mistake in that is that NATO...
Tačno. Greške u tome što je NATO prepoznao da je Rusija slaba, kao da je slaba. Time što je Rusija ušla tako polako i što kaže gently, nije htjeli da razaraju, nije htjeli NATO je prepoznao kao slabu Rusiju. I onda je stigao još veći odgovor. Pa kad, Ukrajinci, pa vi možda ih pobedite, imamo oružje i sve, razumiješ? I to je bila greška Rusa. I sad plaćaju za to, naravno. Da su od početka ušli kako treba i zapletili odmah NATO i svime budeli jedan metak ušao, ama popićete po pički, svi. Mislim da im se ta greška sada odbija u glavu. Mislim ne, oni će pobediti na kraju, nema sumnje, ali će im izginuti dosta ljudi.
I didn't believe that Russia, I didn't believe it. I have to tell you the truth. I thought, wow, why are they doing this? And literally putting one hand behind their back, going in. This is amazing. This is unbelievable. I thought they would come in using doctrine and crush and destroy and what war is all about, what we would have done if we were the United States, if this was the United States. And they didn't. But I know that Russia is militarily stronger than what they projected when they went in initially. I know there's strength there in the Russian system, but it also confused me that they went in with a peacetime military composition, peacetime. There was no mobilization, there was nothing. There was just a peacetime complement of soldiers going in. And in my mind, I said it from the beginning, even if they're successful, they don't have enough troops because the distances they're talking about occupying are vast. And you need troops sufficient to the task of occupying. If there's any resistance, there's going to be a problem. And there wasn't just a little bit of resistance, there was massive resistance. And the Russians didn't have enough troops. And this was misread by NATO as a sign of Russian weakness. And that was, I think, one of the fatal mistakes that NATO made, because Russia was seeking to manage this problem, and NATO sought to overreact. And that's where, and the other thing I can say is, was phase one a failure? I mean, there's another big question that history is going to have to answer. What was the objective of phase one? Was it the total defeat of Ukraine? I believe that there was some hope that resistance would collapse and that the Russians would. But I also think the Russians were realistic because almost immediately Russia began
entertaining negotiations. And if I've learned anything from negotiating with Russians, they don't like to negotiate from a position of strength, or from weakness, I'm sorry. They don't like to negotiate with great uncertainty. When they come to the table, they have well-defined objectives. I learned a lot from my Russian foreign ministry counterparts, and they aren't amateurs. They're not people who panic. They come in and they know what they want to accomplish and how they want to accomplish it. So when they started meeting with the Ukrainians early on in the conflict, before the military had achieved a victory, it led me to believe that total military victory wasn't the objective. The objective was to go in hard and then accept a negotiation that would be a compromise in the middle. And that played out. We saw in Istanbul, they were ready. And Lavrov has spoken about this. They were ready to have a peace settlement that would keep Zelensky in power, keep the Ukrainian military intact. It would just require...
U aprilu kada su seli u Turskoj, kako se zove, da se dogovore, mislim da je koliko rečeno, 80 i nešto posto već bilo dogovoreno. Najglavnije stvari su već bile dogovorene. Da, Ukrajina će da bi Donbas i Lugansk ostao u sastavu Ukrajine i tako dalje i tako dalje. Onda je doleteo Boris Johnson sa misli tipa NATO i ostali. Idi brzo trči u Kijev, reci ovome da ne potpisuje ništa, pa vidi kako su Rusi slabi, bre, pa vidi kako im je armija, pa Ukrajinci ih razvaljuju na putevima i ovo i ono, šta ima da potpisujete? I to je cela greška NATO. Prepoznali su to što su Rusi ušli gently, što bi rekli, nežno, niste li da razvaljuju, niste li da ubijaju, niste li ovo, niste li ono, i sad po rečima Arestovića koji je pre neki dan rekao isto to, da ne samo da nisu hteli, nego su pozivali ljudi da se čak i ako je bilo otpora, su prizivali ljudi da se predaju i tako dalje, su radili onaj sirijski scenarij koji su radili u Siriji. Znači dođemo do grada, kažemo ko je ovde glavni, ne znam, gradonačelnik, mayor i tako dalje, i dogovori se s njim. Nemojte da nas dirate, mi samo prolazimo ovuda, niko vas neće dirati, tako da su Rusi, čini mi se, hteli taj sirijski scenarij, s time što su hteli da sa ovim zaplaše Evropu i zaplaše NATO i zaplaše Ukrajinu. Evropa je greškom prepoznala da je to slabost Rusije i sad će da plate veliku cenu. Ne samo što će da plati Evropa, nego što će najveću cenu da plate Ukrajinci, što je najžalosnije to. Ajmo da sačekamo njegov završni odgovor, pa onda idemo, prekidamo trenutno stream i onda idemo na Trovo, idemo da igramo malo Apex.
Not being part of Russia, independence, and Crimea, of course, be Russia. And it looked like Ukraine was at least pretending to be part of this. But what we now know is that NATO wouldn't allow this to happen. Boris Johnson came in and gave the big nix. But now we have indications from the head of Ukrainian intelligence that the negotiations were just a sham to buy time. Part of the whole overall process of taking advantage of Russia's desire for a peaceful resolution. Because remember, the Minsk Accords, Russia bought in for the Minsk Accords from day one. Vladimir Putin said it was one of his greatest mistakes was to believe the West. They finished the problem in 2014, but he believed the West when they said they wanted peace. We now know they didn't want peace. They were just buying time to build up this military. And now the peace negotiations with Ukraine were a sham also to buy time. But the West took Russia's position as a sign of weakness. And that's why they started, what the United States calls the new Lend-Lease Act of $45 billion, which has now become over $106 billion, worth of $106 billion.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
No one knows where they went exactly.
Ma kaki 106 je samo ono što znamo, ja garantujem da je duplo. Od 2014. se oni finansiraju, tako da sigurno je duplo ako ne i duplo.
Because the Russians had largely destroyed the Ukrainian military by June, July. But suddenly this new army shows up that launches an attack, an aggressive attack against Russians who are overextended. Because when you have 200,000 troops, not all 200,000 are on the front lines. A lot of them are in the rear. You might have 80,000 on the front lines, and when you have a frontage of over 1,000 kilometers, that means you're looking at 50, 60 men per kilometer. You can't defend a kilometer of territory with 50 or 60 men. And when the Ukrainians massed 20, 30, 40,000 troops together, they were able to punch through. There was no defense in depth, and it was a disaster for the Russians. Now, the Russians handled it professionally. They didn't panic. They preserved the lives of their men, the most precious resource they have, and consolidated their defenses. Meanwhile, Ukraine lost men, equipment, and they continue to do that to this day. But it was a perception of Russian weakness that prompted this. Now we have a situation where Russia has recognized the error of its ways. They've mobilized 300,000 reservists. On top of that, there's a considerable number of volunteers that have also been brought in. I would estimate over 100,000. And then you have the troops that were there to begin with. I think Russia has between 600, 700,000 troops coming into play. But these troops are different. To give you an example, when the Russians entered this special military operation initially, they were using a operational methodology that was derived from the end of the Cold War, where Russia downsized its army and went away from division, regiment, battalion, and they created something called the Battalion Tactical Group. And that became their primary tactical unit. And so people didn't speak of which regiment, which brigade, et cetera. They said, how many battalion tactical groups is Russia employing? There's indication now that Russia's not using the battalion tactical group right now, that they've gone back to original first principles, that they're attacking using doctrine that dates back to Soviet times, where you have divisional fire support and you have regiments and battalions operating on a larger front, the kind of frontages that battalion tactical groups are. This means Russia's going to war. I know politically Russia hasn't committed to that. They still call it a special military operation, but I'm calling it a war because Russia now, I believe, has changed its mindset. And when the Russian offensive starts, and there's some indication that it's beginning at the early stages, this is going to be a kind of war totally different from what occurred in phase 1, phase 2, and even over the summer and the fall. This is going to be as close to total war as one can get. It's going to be tragic because the amount of death and destruction that's going to take place on both sides, because war is it's a knife that cuts both ways.
Yeah.
But Russia is going to win. But here's the key. Can Russia achieve victory? Because if Russia wins too quickly, I don't know where Russia's going to go. I have ideas. I've looked at a map. I have Russian history. But if Russia, for instance, makes a move to Odessa and stalls, is NATO, Romania, et cetera, going to feel the need to fill the vacuum in southern Ukraine to prevent the total collapse of the Ukraine front? So how does Russia achieve its objective? I believe a logical objective would be to remove the Transnistria problem by extending Russian control through Odessa, link up, and now you have no more worries about the isolation of Transnistria. It is now part of the whole. Again, I'm not a Russian strategist. I don't know what Russia's thinking. I'm just saying if that's the case, how do you achieve that without causing NATO to panic and intervene? How do you, likewise, operate in the north? I think Kharkov is ripe for the taking. I think Petrovsk might be. But how do you do this in a manner that prevents the West from panicking? So how does Russia win decisively without panic? And I believe that this is calculated into the Russian thinking because they have been masters of escalation management, whereas the West isn't. Look, the West has violated every red line Russia's put out there. The bottom line is this. If you just listen to General Mark Miley, who's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who just visited the Grafenburg training facility in Germany, he's openly saying that we are training Ukrainian forces to be us, We're training them in the same methodology of combat that I was trained in, combined arms operations, close integration of armored fighting vehicles, artillery, air, how to bring that together in a culmination of power to achieve a military objective.
I'm sorry.
That means Russia's at war with NATO.
To be us, what do you mean to be us? You just said...
yes, to be America. To be America.
To be us. To be us, yes.
Yeah, to be us, to be Americans, to fight like us.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that when this force is stood up and goes into Ukraine, Russia's fighting the United States. Because at the end of the day, a man is a man. Okay, he's a piece of meat.
Yeah.
Blood. But how the man is organized, equipped, and how he operates is the definition. We see this over and over again where, look, in the Marine Corps, I love the Marine Corps. We have a large amount of immigrants who join the Marines because they're proud of being an American. They want to serve their country. All right? So they're not red-blooded Americans raised in the South and all this. They're foreigners who come to the United States, have limited exposure to the United States, but when we put them through the Marine Corps training process, they become Marines, they become warriors. It doesn't matter that they're Mexican, Puerto Rican, African, Asian, doesn't matter. They're Marines. And what I'm trying to say here is that the Ukrainians that are going through Grafenwohr right now are being turned into American fighters. They're thinking like Americans, they're going to act like Americans, they're going to operate like Americans, which means when they go back to Ukraine, Russia's going to be fighting Americans. And this is a big deal. This is a big deal for the United States because, one, if Russia beats us, and I think Russia will beat these troops, that's got to be a wake-up call for NATO and the United States that we might not have to take a look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. But two, it also, the defeat of this force may cause NATO to say, well, we can't use the Ukrainian proxy anymore. We're going to bring the real deal in. Rather than having a brigade that's organized, trained to look like us, act like us, operate like us, we're going to bring in the 2nd Brigade of the 2nd Armored Division. We're going to bring in, the real force and do this.
American force on the ground.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the danger of escalation. Right now, sane minds say, no, we're not going to do that. But what happens when you have Lloyd Austin say that we are going to punish Russia? We're going to take it to the Russians. We're going to confront Russia. This is extraordinarily aggressive rhetoric, which attaches to it some political liability, which means once you commit to this, if you don't deliver, you have a political problem. And remember, 2024 is a presidential election, and Joe Biden claims that he wants to be running for re-election. And he doesn't want to be running for re-election as the president who got his rear end kicked in Ukraine.
That's true.
So this is where insanity can come into play. And this is where the maturity of Russia
fucking idiots
comes
from
into
NATO.
play. Look, the Russians have been calling this out from day one. They've been saying this is very dangerous. This is, the escalation is dangerous. These are red lines that you're crossing. But the United States and NATO continue to cross them. Now, I have to say that if the United States was in the same position as Russia, let me reverse now for a second and say that the United States is fighting the Russian invasion, and people were bringing equipment into Poland. Poland would be bombed because Poland is an active participant in the conflict. Germany, by hosting these conferences where this is discussed, has become an active participant in the conflict. Any nation providing material support to Ukraine is an active participant in the conflict. And Russia has every legal right to engage them militarily, to defeat them. The laws of preemption, you don't have to wait for somebody to come and punch you in the face. If it looks like they're getting ready to punch you, bam, you get to hit them first. It's called preemptive self-defense. And yet Russia's not doing it. Why? Because Russia knows the consequences, the potential consequences. And I also think that Russia is so confident in its victory, so confident in its victory that it's willing to allow all of these things to occur, even though it disadvantages. And here's the tragic part. This is the part that just breaks my heart. It breaks my heart. The Russian leaders know that by not preempting, by allowing this to happen, thousands of Russian soldiers are going to die. And they do it anyways. Why? Because they are responsible for 150 million Russian people. And here, I mean, again, I'm going to get teary-eyed here, but the fact that these soldiers are going out there, because in the United States, we don't operate that way. I don't, as a Marine, I don't operate where I say, I'm willing to give the enemy an advantage and sacrifice my Marines if I'm going to war, I'm going to win. I'm winning at all costs. I'm going to kill everybody in front of me. There's just no way. That's why we're Marines.
That's right.
We are very aggressive, hyper aggressive, and we slaughter everything. Not women and children, but anything that's in front of us. The Russians, I believe, are good soldiers. Very good soldiers. Your paratroopers, very good. Wagner, come on. The Marines and your average soldier, good soldiers. But they're being told, slow, not too fast, etc. Knowing, don't bomb this, don't bomb that. Knowing that when they make that decision, they're going to lose the men to their left and their right. They may die themselves. And they're doing it anyways. It breaks your heart. There's something called the burden of command. The burden of command. And it's amazing. Armchair warriors don't understand it because we all sit here in perfection and we draw arrows on maps and we say we would do this and we would do that, we would do this. But we don't have the responsibility. But when the responsibility falls on your shoulders, when you receive the list every morning of the dead soldiers and you have to be the one signing the letters that go out to the families.
I mean, I didn't forget to press record. Okay.
Look, before we got cut off, I was just get carried on because it's an emotional topic. But my point is that this is a war between the collective West and Russia. There's no doubt about it. And if left to its own devices, it's a war that could very easily spin out of control and become a direct conflict between the United States, NATO, and Russia. But I'm less fearful of this because I believe in the maturity of the Russian government and the wise decisions they have made when it comes to escalation management. But I hope the Russian people understand, because it's very easy to criticize military and government officials when casualties start to occur. And there's all of these armchair quarterbacks, they call them the United States, armchair generals, who say, I could do this differently. And you see the blogs. There's a lot of people, I'm not going to give them airtime, but there's a lot of people who participated in the conflict from 2014 to 2022 in the Donbass on the side of the pro-Russian, the ethnic Russians. And they're very bitter, I guess, for not being given the status they feel they believe. And they're very critical of Russian leadership, of Russian military, et cetera. And look, no one says Russian leadership is perfect. No one says the military is perfect. Nothing's perfect. We're all human. But the decisions that the Russian leadership are making are decisions that are the hardest in the world for anybody to make. And I think they're doing the right thing. They're thinking strategically. They're thinking in terms of everything that's happening. They're also thinking about what needs to happen once this conflict is done. The Russians are preparing for what happens after the war. And a lot of armchair generals don't. They want the quick victory. They want this, they want this. But they don't have the burden of command. The burden of command is a huge burden. And the Russian people, I hope, will show the same level of maturity as their government and understand that many of these decisions that are made, they're difficult decisions, but they have to be made because you don't want this thing to spiral out of control. You don't want this to become a nuclear war. Because I believe in my heart of hearts that Russians love their children as much as I love my children. Russian grandparents love their grandchildren as much as, if I'm ever blessed with grandchildren, I would love mine. And you want a better world for them, and a world that is going to be subjected to the Holocaust of nuclear conflict will not be a better world. It won't exist. And so people need to keep that in mind. It's the Russian government, more than any other government in the world today, that's preventing this situation from escalating to a potential nuclear conflict.
It's not only, well...
Ok. Znači sad ćemo prekinemo stream. Ne mogu da se prebacim samo na trovo. Pa ćemo nastaviti sutra. Svaki dan po sat, dva na raznim lokacijama.